everyone. This is Pam Reese with Adventures in Aging. And again, I'm here with my friend,
Gary Vandenberg. Hi, Pam. Thank you again to our sponsor, Stridelight. Stridelight.net provides quality diabetic shoes, custom inserts, orthotics, all lower extremities. For over 20 years, they've been providing quality feet-related products. Please mention Stridelight to your doctor, podiatrist, for the best solutions for your feet. Thanks, Stridelight.net.
And thank you to our podcast listeners. We love each and every one of you. Gary and I appreciate you sharing our podcast. So keep listening. We so appreciate it.
What's today's topic, Pam?
So today, Gary is speaking without filters.
Without filters. Oh, I'm guilty of that. And people do that to me all the time. In fact, this morning.
Oh, just happened.
My son's, I said, he goes, what are you doing today? I said, I'm going off to do a podcast. Oh, you still do those? Kind of sarcastically. And I said, I should have named you Frank because you're frank and honest, right?
Oh, my gosh.
Isn't that something? But, people say things right off the cuff all the time.
So, Gary, we all have our moments in time where we say something and immediately we wish we could retract it.
Oh, yeah. I've done that several times.
Right?
I remember telling somebody, I'll jump right into it. It was a friend of hers, was actually her boss. And I said, your social worker, she should have been a nun when you really stop and think about it. She chose the wrong career path. And somehow it wasn't meant to be as negative as when it got back to the person. I ended up having to buy flowers for that person.
Oh, no, of course. You have to backtrack what you said.
Yeah.
So I have an experience where I was interviewing someone. Yeah, I was actually interviewing. And when you interview, you have to be very aware of your words, right? You have to be very focused on
but you want to be personable
appropriateness.
Too. Right.
So I had heard prior to an interview that who I was interviewing was pregnant. So I did have this in my head.
How wonderful.
Yeah. So the poor girl walks in and there she is looking 5 months pregnant. She sits down. We have our interview. We're discussing, the position. And then I thought I'd be personal, right? I thought I'd touch on the personal.
Sure.
And I say, so when are you due? Gary,
oh, no.
Gary. She wasn't pregnant.
Oh, did she take the job?
She did. But you talk about embarrassment, humiliation. That poor girl, I think we did hire her. She did take the job. And there wasn't a time that went by where I didn't see her that I just cringed. I wanted to go. Did you ever just want to vanish from Earth? Say something and then vanish from Earth because you don't know how to back out of it.
I don't know about that. But, really think about filters. Well, I'm sure there's a whole logic behind that. And I think we'll dive into this a little bit because, and how it's tied in with Adventures of Aging. I really thought maybe as people get older, maybe they're the only ones guilty of this. But I think people of all ages have a tendency of just blurting stuff out from time to time.
And even in this day and age, you even have to be more careful than you used to be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're talking about a pregnant person. I was with one the other day. I didn't say anything. I let them say it. Does that make sense?
You can't even say congratulations anymore.
Or nice hairstyle, nice outfit.
It might be a bad hair day for them.
Well, or else they would, I'm sexually harassing them by saying you've got a nice outfit.
100%.
So
you have to be careful.
I kind of not say anything at times. How does that sound? So tell me a little bit about, being candid or forthright or telling it like it is.
Yeah. So this is a bigger discussion about those filters that we talk about. And so faulty filters. It's supposed to be common among the old more so than the young. It's that thought of I've earned the right to not have a filter. I've earned the right to be forthright and honest.
Okay.
And statistically, when you get older, it is proven that most people start to break down their filters. And there is something to be said for the fact that I've gone my whole life not saying how I feel. I've always had to be socially appropriate. I've always been the nice person. But you know what? I am going to talk how I feel. But you have to be careful in so doing that. So there's an old saying. Wise men have something to say, while fools have to say something.
Isn't that something? Yeah, there's some people that just talk all the time.
Oh, my gosh. Have you ever been with someone who overtalks?
Oh, yeah, many times. And they don't take a breath.
They don't take a breath.
Stop and take a breath, and they just keep going. So.
And you can't get a word in edgewise. But also, have you ever had a conversation with someone, and it kind of equates a little bit back to our beginning of this podcast, where someone says something to you and it is sarcastic.
Oh,
and it shoots you down mentally and emotionally within a nanosecond.
Oh, well, but sarcasm, I love sarcasm. I've worked with people that are just ripping me apart, and I laugh my heads off. And a couple of weeks ago, I actually bumped into somebody that I hadn't seen for like 2 years.
Yeah.
And this guy looks right at me. He says, "Man, those pandemic pounds got on you."
Oh, my gosh.
I'm like, I don't think I really gained that much, if I gained anything. But isn't that something?
Yeah.
Just right. And I remember bumping into this boss that we had years ago, we had a shared boss.
Yeah.
And I hadn't seen him for like 10 years.
Right.
And he looks at me and he goes, "Man, you got fat." And I said,
"What?
You got old. You got
What?
old." His hair had changed, But so I kind of like that. I mean, it was just like.
So you're not offended by sarcasm?
Oh, I usually end up laughing my head off.
See, I need to be more like you, because one of the things that is most difficult for me in conversation is sarcasm.
Oh, sarcasm. Oh, it's an art
Gary,
form.
then I need you to teach me the other side
It's
of that.
an art form. Most people do not laugh about sarcasm, though. They're more like you. People take it kind of personally.
So I feel that sarcasm is a personal truth. I feel that when someone is being sarcastic, or have you ever heard someone say, I'm just kidding. I'm just teasing you.
Just kidding or teasing.
Well, those, if it hurts that person, it's not funny to everyone, right?
But don't you think sometimes all of this about speaking without filters, part of me thinks it comes from wanting to do good, right? No, you don't.
I don't see that. What do you mean wanting to do good?
You know, that they want you to be better than you are, right? Or
honestly,
the best you can be.
Do you feel that others that don't love you with their whole heart really want the best for you?
Well, I don't know. So, but I was thinking about, and I was thinking about Stephen Covey. Did you ever hear of Stephen Covey before?
Absolutely. The Covey calendar, the Covey day planner.
He says 7 habits of highly effective people. Right. And I believe one thing that I heard him one time talking about was the fact that there's something called a circle of concern and circle of influence. And did you ever hear those phrases?
I have.
And a circle of concern is how people are like, I'm concerned about homelessness, aren't you, Pam?
Yeah, of course.
I'm concerned about elderly abuse, aren't you?
Of course.
I'm concerned about.
Are these just yes questions?
Yeah, I think we're all concerned. I could just keep rattling off about poverty and, the environment and all those types of things.
And it would be, it would really be politically incorrect and socially incorrect to not agree with you.
And so what Stephen Covey says, there's a circle of concern. It's like a big circle. Now, inside that circle of concern is a smaller circle called circle of influence.
All right.
Did you ever hear that phrase?
Explain more to me.
Good. So a circle of influence, if you stop and say, I'm concerned about homelessness.
Yeah.
The next thing you should say is, I am going to do the following. That becomes your circle of influence.
So now you have an action.
I'm going to do something. And the example that he used, or at least the one that I've carried with me for years, is from the Boomtown Rats. Have you ever heard of the Boomtown Rats?
No, I have not.
Where have you been your whole life?
I'm sheltered.
Anyone that's a baby boomer would remember this Irish band.
Okay.
They started back in 1975, and they were really big. One of their big songs was "I Don't Like Mondays."
Okay, so I do know the song.
Right.
I could sing the song.
Right. And their lead vocalist was Bob Geldof. I think he probably still is. I'm sure he's still around. So anyways, how this circle of influence and circle of concern kind of ties in with filters and all those things was he's sitting around with his band one day, how I understood the story to go. And he's watching, unfortunately, people starving in Africa.
Yeah.
I believe it was Ethiopia.
Okay.
And he got mad. He says, I've been watching this show and I've been concerned about this for a long time.
Okay.
And I want to do something about it. See, I want to do something about it. And so he goes, I'm going to get a couple of my musician buddies. We're going to go down the street. I always say and visualize, go down the street. We're going to raise some money. I'm going to put it in a suitcase. I'm going to fly over to Ethiopia. I'm going to find these poor people that are starving, and I'm going to open the suitcase and I'm going to buy them food. Right?
All right. So was the trip made?
Wait, this is a good story.
All right. I want to
get
to the crux to this.
So he contacted a few of his rock and roll buddies, and guess what happened in July of 1985? It's one of those high points in my life. Do you know what happened in July of 1985?
Tell me more.
Live Aid.
I remember Live Aid.
And that was in Wembley Stadium and JFK, 2 different continents.
I remember it.
And guess how much money that little guy raised?
Had to be millions.
$200 million.
Right.
He's stuck in his little suitcase to fly over to Ethiopia.
So I love that story. I don't think that's the majority.
Okay. So the reason that I tie that in and how it ties in with the filters is I think that there's an idea at times that people, they say something because they want to influence you, right? They want to.
Oh, absolutely.
See, they want to be out of that circle of concern. They want to now be in. They want to make you better. They want you to be the best, the safest, the healthiest.
So right now you kind of sound like the boss, right? You know how companies will have their morale and their employee boosting and hey, let's praise everyone and empower. And that's what that sounds like. I don't really care what you have to contribute, but I'm going to make you think I care. I think there's some of that. Yeah. So, Gary, we believe what we want to believe. Do you believe in that statement?
Do we believe what we want to believe? I think that it's really hard to change people, and I think that's really part of it. And, I'm sure when you were a teenager, did your parents ever tell you to do something?
All the time.
Yeah, and usually mine, if they said that, I said, that's probably the opposite of what I should be doing, right?
Of what your parents told you?
I don't know, yeah.
Oh, my gosh, Gary. So when my parents told me something, I thought, well, there's a no choice request.
Oh yeah, there was not much choice, but it's the idea of the motivation behind it was probably my rebellious side was probably trying to say, if they don't want me to go to that concert, it's probably going to be because it's a great concert of all time.
Oh my gosh, I love your frame of mind.
Isn't that funny?
Maybe I need to think a little more like that.
And so at ages, I think, my kids are totally different. If we said something, they usually agreed with it, Isn't that funny how that kind of things? But isn't it funny as you are at certain ages, you're asking for advice though, aren't you?
Let's explore this. People always say, I want to talk to my friends and family. Right, big decisions.
Oh yeah,
I'm going to talk to my friends and family.
Where am I going to college? My career?
Should I take the job? Should I move across the country? Should I marry this guy?
So part of us is asking people for their opinion.
Asking for opinion because you're torn.
Right.
That person is torn.
Right.
However, they go into that discussion and that question in their heart, sometimes having the answer. I know I want to do that, but let me get your opinion. So let's say you give your opinion that's totally opposite of what that person's thinking. Are you changing their mind? Or does it spark a bigger debate about, but I'm going to tell you why I really do want to do it.
Yeah. And, some people take that advice, though. I mean, that's so weird. I was talking to one of my cousins, and he ended up being a banker, really successful banker. And I said, what influenced you to do that? He goes, your dad. Your dad said what a great career it was. And I'm going, man, I was the complete opposite of those kind of advice if I didn't remember hearing it. But isn't it funny how it impacts some people have on other things? But, sometimes I find myself, at least in a job, have you ever been in a room and they say, all right, we want everybody's opinion.
Well, that's because it sounds good, right?
But they already have their mind made up.
100%.
Now, it took me several jobs and career paths to realize I shouldn't probably tell them exactly what's on my mind, right?
You know what? Hopefully everyone's working in a very equalized and balanced environment where opinion matters. Be careful. Make sure you really do know that matters because it could be held against you later.
Yeah. So, when they would ask something like, well, what do you think we should do? Oh, here's Gary saying something like, oh, I think we should, give it all away for free. We should do this and that.
Oh, my gosh.
Hire twice as many people.
And everybody just gives you that look, try not to look. They don't want to say, Gary, that's a stupid comment.
Right. But, when you stop and think about it, the other thing I think that comes to mind is alcohol, right?
Okay.
Have you ever been in a spot where people start talking and they start talking more frankly when they've had a few drinks?
100%. Yeah.
Isn't that something?
That's why you should never have a serious discussion with others while you're drinking alcohol.
Okay. And it's a bad story. And I always say to our listeners, do not do what Gary's about to say. All right.
Many, many times.
So there's a going away party for someone that I worked with, right? And it was one of these things at that time is okay. And it's probably still, we all met at a bar, right? So everyone's sitting there having, the farewell drinks to this woman. And at some point, ready to hear what I said? This is like bizarre.
Okay.
I said, after so many drinks, I said, it's time for me to go home because you're actually looking good.
Oh, Gary.
And everyone laughed.
Oh.
And, she started laughing too a little bit.
Oh, she didn't laugh the next morning.
Isn't that funny? Because when you stop and think about it, how cutting that is, right?
That's horrible.
So those that are drinking alcohol, don't say anything cutting like that.
No, but unfortunately, some people just don't even know what that, like, did you even remember? Well, obviously you remembered what you said.
Oh, yeah, I ran into this person years later, and we laughed about it. How's that sound? But, it's funny to laugh about things like that.
So, Gary, there's also a tonality, right?
So, I hope.
So how many times have you ever sent a text or read a text and you read it with a tone?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I got one from a boss one time. It was like 10 o'clock at night, maybe even later. And it said, the honeymoon is over.
Oh.
Now, how do you read
I read that bad.
Yeah, that's not a good message. I don't even know what that means.
Right. And what do you respond back?
Oh, my gosh.
Like, OMG, what's that mean?
But yeah, how people interpret that.
And how you have your voice, what your tonality is as you're speaking makes a huge, huge difference to the other person.
Yeah.
Right. You could even say something really nice, but if your tone is sarcastic and a little loud or
oh yeah,
and you have a bad looking look on your face, I'm probably not going to take it real good.
Now, what some people have said, and is the idea of being consistent. So where you run into a problem is somebody that's very serious all the time, and then they try to be inconsistent and say something funny. How's that sound? And then that's when you get confused and cutting. But I know we want to talk also about elderly, right?
Yes.
Have you ever had an elderly person and they just kind of say it off the
all
cuff,
the time,
where you walk by and they say, "Hey, sweetie, hey, this or that,"
or that's the ugliest shirt I ever saw, or "Hey, honey, can you comb your hair?"
Looks like you're having a bad day.
Yeah. Oh, you don't smell so good. I mean, there are very little filters sometimes, but God bless them. Sometimes there's the dementia side of that where they're not aware. So yeah. I give a pass.
But believe it or not, and I looked it up, there was a study from the University of Edinburgh, all right? And believe it or not, they took 100 people, elderly people, and they got them into a room and they kind of showed them different visual tests of different people. Actually, they used ages between 17 and 84, so there's different age group to see if there was an impact. And they tested how the participants' attention was and the ability to concentrate on one thing and ignore another and this and that. And what ended up happening was that people could not switch. The elderly people couldn't switch from one thing to another. And how you may say, well, what does that have to do with anything? And what it ended up doing was that people would end up being distracted, more, if that makes sense. They would go from one distraction to another. And what that would end up doing is people would actually begin to say what's on their mind more. It's kind of a bizarre kind of thing.
Yeah, it is.
But it's almost kind of tied in. If you ever think about someone saying, don't tell a secret.
Do you know what I tell people? If they say, hey, don't tell anyone, and I have to think about it and say, well, maybe you shouldn't tell me.
And so what this research was saying, it's a similar kind of process where it's almost in your brain, you just start blurting out stuff, right?
Oh, my gosh, yes. Have you ever been around the person that can't wait to tell you?
Oh, I've had people hunt me down excitingly, tell me, oh, I got to tell you what's going on here.
Yes, it's gossipy. That's gossipy. Yeah.
Well, for those that want to counteract, I've often said to people, though, that have reported to me or I work close with, I said, if anyone whispers to you, tells you about your health or,
right.
they can't be good. If they, in most cases, right?
That's right.
Isn't that funny? So I've always said, leave the door open. If you can't say it to me, there should never be privacy kind of thing.
Yeah, I get that. And do you believe in, like misery loves company?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so all these bad things, all these bad feelings. I'm going to tell you, and I'd love to hear yours.
Piling on.
Piling on.
Piling on is what that's called. Isn't that something, how we kind of do that? But there are other reasons why it comes to the elderly also. And, and I was looking up different things for the podcast here. And one of them is that as our brain ages, our filter kind of wears out a little bit, doesn't it?
Yes, that's true.
Right. And so what ends up happening is that, because of their age and their position at times, it's more likely that they're going to say something because what do they have to lose? Does that make sense?
I think there's a lot to be said for that. And there's this gray area, right? I love it when people can say what's on their mind and not be fearful of a reaction. Yeah. But I also have to look at the side where it depends on how you say it, who you're saying it to, and where you're saying it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Say it in a different way.
So, and I get, when people get older, I do give them a pass, right? I do.
Yeah, but why? You think it's because of their condition?
I think that, you're right. They don't really care anymore about your
the
feelings.
Consequences.
Your feelings.
Or a waitress's feelings or
right.
Service person's.
And in my mind, they've lived a good 80 years.
Right.
Right? Say what you want to say. Now, there's also that fine line of being mean. Just being mean.
You think people are intentionally being mean?
I think at times people are intentionally being mean when they say mean thing. I do.
Okay. I guess I'm naive. I'm naive.
Really?
I still think that people say things, there might be a mental condition or something like that. I worked with this guy years ago. This was classic. Right?
Yeah.
This guy could tick off anybody in the first minute he met him, right?
Because he had that sarcastic personality.
Yeah, but I think he also had some form of AHDA or something.
Oh, okay. AHDA. ADHD.
He had some version of something. Okay. And I remember talking to him. I said, boy, he would be with somebody and he'd walk away and they would just be so,
He stresses them out.
Because he would just, say things so directly.
Yeah.
It was painful.
But what if someone talked to him that way? Yeah, what would happen?
It didn't faze him.
Oh.
But he
didn't get more defensive
But I'm convinced to this day, because I remember having a conversation with him. I said, I can't believe that, people respond as they do around you.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think it had to do with a condition that he needed medicine for, he needed something for. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That he kind of was dealing with that. But the other thing, when it comes to elderly too, I think that what ends up happening is, and I read this somewhere, they said, they notice stupid quicker, right? They notice stupid things quicker because they've been around the block.
I hope so. And then you hear of the elderly being taken advantage of, by telemarketers or, hey, let me tell you about this great deal, buying something, or let me tell you about what you can, what investment there will be if you sell your property. And I mean, you got to be careful you're not taken advantage of.
Well, but when I say they've noticed that, I mean, if somebody came and said, we've got the best investment of all time, if you're 80 years old, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
You've heard that before. This isn't the first time that somebody's come by.
But I know so many that have been taken advantage of.
But on the other hand, too, if somebody comes and they've got purple hair and they say to their grandmother, Grammy, what do you think of my hair?
Yeah.
They've also know, hey, granddaughter, you're limiting your job opportunities and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Well, I know my grandmother would have said, well, you look ridiculous. Right? But that's funny to me.
Right.
That's kind of funny.
But, so I really wonder sometimes when people do those types of things, whether, the filters are biological or is it social or it's those types of things that they just kind of brought with them over time. So, they kind of tell it like it is, right? Does that make sense?
Yes. Many, many, many times.
And so when you think about telling it like it is, is that just being honest, right? When you stop and think about being honest on different things that people sometimes, I wonder if, it goes back to the definition of what is truth, right?
What is truth?
What is the truth, right? It's changed.
You can't handle the truth.
Yeah. And I think they come across that way. Right.
There's something to be said for that statement.
That you can't handle the truth, right? Because
that's right.
And so, on one side here, we're asking people their advice, their opinions, mom, gram, friend, what should we do? And what's going to happen when you look right at them and say, you probably shouldn't marry that guy. You probably shouldn't do that career. It doesn't pay. You probably shouldn't live there because it costs 5 times more than the rest of the country, right?
Right.
You probably shouldn't do a lot of things in your life, but you're young and stupid, right? So.
Oh, no, so true. And what about advice that people give out of jealousy?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Well, part of this, and when you stop and think about it, aren't you sometimes critical of other people, of things in your own self?
Yes, and sometimes people are critical of others because in reality there might be something they subconsciously envy, and they're jealous that they don't have that attribute. And so, for instance, let's say there's a conversation where someone says, maybe it's 2 single people. I just met this guy. He's got a great job.
Everything's going well with them.
It's going great. He's the most polite. He even bought me this fabulous dinner, while the other girl's sitting there going, ew. Yeah, right? Why didn't that happen to me?
Yeah, I can actually relate to that, Pam. This is a
for goodness sakes.
No, to a certain degree.
Yeah, why didn't that happen to me? And then what if that person comes back and says, well, Julie, he's not so great. You better give this time. Yeah. I heard, and then they start talking about the negatives. They don't want you to be happy.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
What I was about to confess to our audience and yourself. See, I would say probably till I had kids. All right? See, I probably would look at people saying, man, why don't I have that car? Why don't I have that job?
But you wouldn't verbalize it.
No, but there's other ways of cutting people down.
So when someone said, hey, Gary, come out and see my new car, did you say, I don't like that type of car?
Or feeling like, something's going to happen. But, I'd say maybe it's after having kids or something. I like when I hear people are successful and doing great things and going places and have a wonderful, I'm excited for them now. Isn't it something how your life changes and you're like, oh, wow, that's great.
So I am such I make decisions off of people's actions and their hearts. That is such a big deal to me. And if I know this other person has a good heart, they're a good person, and fabulous things are happening to them, I am so happy for them, right? I am so excited for them.
Well, have you always been that way, or is it something?
I think so. Okay. I think I have. The people I'm not so excited for are sarcastic, look at me type of attitude.
Gosh, that's like me, Pam.
Oh, but you and I get along, Gary.
I'm just teasing you. But part of speaking through these filters or lack of filters, don't you think sometimes it's just people are nervous about things that they just want to say something? Have you ever been around somebody that's nervous and
they don't know what to say, so they say anything ridiculous?
Yeah, and it gets worse.
It gets worse. Do you ever have have you ever been in a conversation where all of a sudden you don't even know what that other person's talking about?
Oh yeah, they're in some, people are probably saying that about our podcast at times.
Everyone listening right now saying, we have no idea what those two are talking about, for sure.
But part of it too is nervousness, but also about when I stop and think about it, when you have to filter something, you actually are kind of lying to somebody, aren't you? Let's say they showed up and they said, what do you think of my hair? My hairstyle. And it's ridiculous. It's shaved on one side and it's purple on the other side.
It looks stupid.
And it's not working.
You're not even cute anymore.
Right. It's not working. But you find yourself, you're lying, aren't you?
Because you're trying to be kind.
You're trying to be kind. And then it becomes another lie if somebody else said something to them and they come back to you saying, I thought you said my hair looked good.
Well, it's really bad when you say how good your hairstyle is, but then you turn around and tell the other friend, hey, did you see her hair? Right? And now you're gossiping behind that person's back.
Oh, yeah.
It goes into that vicious cycle.
That goes back to that whole secret thing. I was reading as part of preparing for this. It said, the best way to keep a secret with 3 people is that 2 of them would be dead. How's that sound?
No. You got to be careful what you say to others. And a lot of times you got to be careful how you say it to others.
Oh, things come swinging back there. And as we said before, there's people that don't care, right?
Just plain don't care what you think.
Yeah, isn't it? And it's like I heard something recently. It's from one of my relatives, And they said, it's other people's problem. That's their problem. Whatever I say, that's their problem, how they react. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, I have a debate about this. A lot of people will say, I don't care what people think of me. I just don't care anymore. Gary, we're human beings. We all care what others think.
Isn't that something? Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. And I know sometimes the first time we meet somebody, don't we sometimes make a judgment about them real quick?
Oh, yes, within a second.
And it blurts out. Someone says, hey, what'd you think of Susie, our new employee here? Oh, she looks crazy, Yeah.
She said whatever. And I guess her and I will have to have a talk, right? You judge right off the bat.
Yeah, that's terrible. I think we all do that by accident or by intention.
It's a horrible thing to do.
It's some part of our genetic code there. And as I said, people just say deal with it. But, I think there is something that says, that people that do talk straightforward, in their mind, they're telling it like it is. They're saying it's straightforward, it's candid, it's open, it's enlightening or whatever it might be. But have you ever met people that kind of, they think they're doing good by sharing their point of view on something?
And then is that person viewed as a know-it-all? Right? I mean, am I supposed to listen to you?
Well, again, I think it goes back to, that whole thing that I was saying, if you were a boss of something, right?
Yeah.
Don't you have more confidence in saying stuff than if you were the bottom line employee of a place?
Yes.
Of being blunt and honest.
Yes, that's so true. And so many people are intimidated by position, right? Or by overconfidence. People become intimidated by that virtue of overconfidence.
And I think there's also a point of laziness, too. I think that sometimes people don't want to try hard to try to figure something out, so they'll just bypass everything and just say what's on their mind, right?
So at the end of the day, are you supposed to be brutally honest with others? Or should you have your filter and just be kind? How do you do it, Gary?
How do I do it?
Yeah, how do you do it?
Well, as I get older, I'm trying to count backwards from a few seconds in my mind. I don't count backwards, but I try to, absorb it a little bit more before I say something, and try not to, if I don't know somebody, I give them a little bit more time to kind of, get to know them. How's that sound?
I like it.
Before I do those types of things.
I like that.
And the other thing is, I tend to, and I've tried to do a better job at this. That sarcasm, that can be cutting. I would say more times than not when I was younger.
And Gary, you and I are good friends. I don't take your comments to me as sarcastic.
Well, I've tried my best.
Oh, because you have a filter with me.
I'm trying to filter it.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
But so that
I probably say more sarcastic things to you.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
But isn't that funny?
I feel bad.
But I think that the moral of the story, the bottom line, I think, is the fact that it can happen at any time. You don't have to. It seems like we pay more attention to grandma saying something funny off the cuff about something.
Sure.
But I think if you really stop and think about, as I've done the last couple of weeks here, thinking about this topic, we've done it our whole lives. We've
always will.
We've said things that we wish we could reel them back in that are gone.
Yep.
Right?
All the time. Or have you ever spoke to someone and there's something you should have said? You should have been a little more complimentary. You should have made a comment. You should have said something. And that wears on you later. Why didn't I say?
Oh, yeah. When you stop and think about it, I remember I have a brother-in-law, and whenever I see him, he always brings up, he's had to fire, it seems like dozens and hundreds of people over the years. And he asked me one time about something. I said, oh, you should do the hamburger. And say something positive, like, man, you are a great person. You're a great dad. You're wonderful.
Yes, but you're just not a good fit here.
Yeah.
Gary.
And then you end with the other side of the hamburger saying, but I know we're holding you back. You're going to have a great career somewhere else.
You have so much more potential somewhere else than here. Oh, see, I take that as offensive.
He said most people appreciate that conversation.
Oh, okay. Well, not me. Just tell me. You don't like me, Pam. You're not working out.
Be honest, right?
Be honest with me. That one, just be honest. All right, Gary. Well, we've come to another end of our podcast. This was a fun topic. So, just want to thank all of our listeners. Please keep tuning in. Share our podcast with your friends and your family. And we'll talk to you next time. Thank you.